Good evening, everyone. I'm Bethany Cromer. Welcome to this week's Elemental Evolution Show. I'm so glad to have you all here. Hello to everyone in the chat room. I have with me Sherry Wisdom. Hello, Sherry. How are you doing?
Hi there. How does this sound?
Sounds wonderful. Sounds a lot better than last time.
Oh, I'm so glad. New headsets.
And then we have our special guest, Dan Alvin. Dan, are you there?
I'm here. What's up?
How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm having a just splendid day. Fantastic.
Good. We're so glad to have you here with us today.
Hi,
Thank
Dan.
you. Sherry, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about tonight's show.
Yeah, I'm super primed. That background conversation we had was eye-opening, very invigorating.
Yay. Okay.
So, Dan, you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, what I'm doing a lot of my time right now is more involved with like music and dance, but I think we wanted to talk more about food, energetics, and consumption patterns, and all the different plant-based and mineral and fungal-based healing modalities and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Which I have a long history of, and so does Sherry.
Yeah, and again, like, don't leave that part, like, as if, the dance and all that kind of stuff is relevant as well. So that's, it's all part of it. But like today, I think what we had talked about is just staying kind of on the food focus. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying. How this kind of happened is I mentioned to Bethany, I've been trying to plug in my 20-some years of using what you put in your body and what you surround yourself with as like transformative quantum and healing modalities on 3D and other levels. But I haven't been able to like really make that work in the last few years. There's been all these signs and very clear signals that I've gotten that shouldn't be what I should be doing, and I think it's partially because I went off on that path, completely absorbed into it for like 12 years or more, and put all of my artistic pursuits off to the side in pursuit of all of those different knowledge bases and those different courses of where fate took me in my life. So originally I kind of started out as a writer and a singer, and I was a writer when I was a really small child and a poet when I was a teenager and all that stuff. So I think it was time as like building up going through the new cosmic windows in 2011 and 2012 and 2013 that something on my soul level was saying, you really need to get back to kind of being an artist at the same time that you've been focused on all of these food-based healing modalities. So I spend a lot of time on music right now and talking to people about music, sharing music, and it's working out beautifully for me. But I mentioned to Bethany, it's like if I could work with you, Sherry, and anyone else who is from these fields of wisdom and these disciplines of knowledge to contribute anything to the larger conversation and assist people if they feel like they need assisting, I would be really honored to do that.
Well, so that's like, I think that's where we kind of left off with our conversation earlier. It's like there's so much happening on the planet right now, and people are throwing out so many different ideas and have so many perceptions of different things, and I don't think any of them are necessarily wrong or right or any of that. But I know that like the big question for me is, how's that working, right? Like if you're doing something and it seems like that's what everybody on the planet is telling you should be doing, but you're unhappy, you're not waking up happy every day, you're not going to bed happy every day, maybe it's time to take a look at doing it differently, right? And that's one of the things I think a lot of people struggle with here, right? That's in this time, it's like people will know, well, we shouldn't eat Monsanto, but we still go to King Soopers and we still buy what's on sale and we still take it home and we still feed it to our kid. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
It's like, everybody's like, I don't know why I'm sick. Well, okay.
It's kind of the whole being in the moment thing, right? And it always goes back to these big, huge universal truths of really being immediately centered when you are thinking about putting things in your body, which, from my perspective is a totally sacred vessel. I've been through hell and high water with mine, as a lot of other people have as well, and I used to feel a sense, I've gone through the gamut of how I felt about my interface spiritually with my 3D form here, and there are so many different directions you can go with how you perceive yourself in this existence that we're all sharing, and a lot of that has to do with the energies that you are putting into your vessel every day, and the way to become aware of that is to really, it's not fear-based, it's not anxiety-based. The number one cause of problems in people's lives has been proven time and time and again in all kinds of independent studies across the philosophical spectrum, that if you're super healthy and you're, on a 3D whatever level, but you're still worried about stuff all the time, you're still going to get sick. That's the number one issue.
Yeah.
Like for me, I always put that to the foreground. Everybody's on a different gradation with how they are, interfacing
that's like
with
the guy that
their...
it's like the guy that you read about, that's in his late 30s and he's done everything right. He doesn't eat all the things that you're not supposed to eat, and he exercises every day, and he does all this great stuff. And one morning he's running and drops dead in 3 seconds of a heart attack. Right. And and that's, you see that. Like that's, and if people are like, wow, it's such a phenomenon. Well, look at his life. Right? What kind of sorrow, what kind of wounding, where is his heart so shut down that at that age it's done?
Yes. That you hit like there's different spiritual walls and agreements and passages, and all those things can be in flux constantly, like, nanosecond to nanosecond, which is, back again to being in the moment. And, he could have had that in that theoretical example, that person could have had some kind of total epiphany from a butterfly flying by them, a few seconds before that was supposed to be destined to happen, and his heart chakra opens up a little bit more and it doesn't happen, It's just, so it's all about being perceptually acute. And like I said, the reason I threw out the anxiety part was I've been all up and down and around with, I've lived, like kind of, I hate to say a fear-based diet, but I've definitely had huge chunks of time in my journey with how I interact with things that I consume to sustain me, where I have been like totally dogmatically incapable of ingesting some things. And I still am that way about lots of things. I would rather like go on an extended fast than consume some things that some people think are like standard food stuff, because I know they would really corrupt me and screw up my entire expression of my energy in this reality, because that's the way it was when I did consume those things, and I thought that was me, and that wasn't me. That was me ingesting these energy patterns that were basically warping who I was and what my expression of my soul was. So I know that now. I've lived it. I've gone through it 6 ways through Friday and back again, and so I know it's real, and I know it's going to be really, really profound for me.
Well, and this is where, and I think, so this is where, like, I step in, right? And I'm like, okay, I have had clients or people that I've worked with that have been, like, they're allergic to everything on the planet. Right? I mean, like, literally, like, they can't eat anything because they're allergic to, baking soda. They're allergic to wheat. They're allergic to this. They're allergic to that. And so it's like the basis of every food that you eat, right? And so like they're cut out of things, and they've got all these allergies, and they've got all these different things. Or, somebody will hear of something, and all of a sudden that's the definite reason why they've had this issue their whole life. And amazingly, when they stop eating it, it goes away.
Right.
And it's, to me, I guess, where I see things like this.
Like hundreds of the universe, yeah. Go ahead.
It's like, yeah, it is. It's like, and so it's like, so what ends up happening? I mean, so like with this process, and where I try and take people is back into the place in the body where those kind of things have started, right? Because usually when people have a ton of allergies and there's a ton of issues around food, it's because they've been deprived in their life somewhere. There's been a need not met food-wise, and it can go either direction, right? It can be like, given too much, given too little, not given enough of the right foods, not been, you know what I mean? It can be all these different creations, and it all comes down to the one thing of food is an issue for a lot of people. Go ahead, sorry.
Keep going, but just a little aside. There's just a confluence of factors, right? There's so many variables in all of our existences and everything that we're experiencing, why we're here, what we're doing. We're in an ocean of X factors, you know, and we are positing ourselves or not positing ourselves, making things happen for ourselves or letting things happen to us every second of every day. And
well, if you think, and that's what we were talking about earlier.
That you can take control of. You can take control of more times than not what you're putting in your body. So it's a huge benefit to you to spend a little time thinking about that.
Sure, and
anyway.
and it does, and so then, but like I love to go into like taking it even deeper, right? Because the thing is that, and I know we talked about this, is that it's like the meats and the foods and the things that we are eating. It's not to me. It's not necessarily whether or not it's, let's say, good for you, right? It's like, how was that cow killed? How was that animal living? What kind of vibration did it hold when it died? What's in the meat? You know, we are made up of atoms that carry vibration, and people can believe it or not, but the vibration that is traveled through the body, the emotion, is what sticks in those receptors and is what is projecting from our reality. And that's what it's supposed to do. Like, that's the purpose of the body. That's why we're in this 3D reality, right? So it's like we're not the only thing doing that. These animals that are being, you know, abused and mistreated or whatever you want to call it are like, they're doing the same thing. They're projecting out and pulling in, and that's staying in their tissue and holding and all that stuff, and then we're eating it. Ew.
Yeah, you have to spend a lot more time. There's so many factors to look at. I've for example, you know, if you, I don't even know which way to go. There's so many different directions to go on that topic.
Well, I know, and that's kind of, it's like, and this is why I bring it up, because there's so many, like, some people will tell you, bless your food, right?
Yes.
Some people will say, yeah, I mean, you can go like this, or some people will say, well, just don't eat that. Some people will say, well, you know, do this or do that, or, you know, I mean, they'll have, like, people will have a remedy for every single thing, and either it's an excuse or it's a, it's just a way to either do it or not. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, it doesn't have to really be of truth.
You have to put so much more energy into making something that comes from a heavy energy place into your body. You have to put so much more intent and focus, tons more, to make that, to give you, not only not give you something potentially toxic or something wrong going with it, but to make it useful. It just takes so much more energy to do that, even if you have to do that, or you feel like economically you have to do that, or culturally, or whatever. You know, most people aren't thinking about what they're consuming on this level that we're talking about at all, which is why we're having this conversation. Yeah. But
that's because it's people think they can't afford to eat well. See, and this is something where, and that's not a deception, right? There's a purpose in that. There's a reason that the foods that are distributed to people in poverty are the way they are, because where do you think it's keeping them?
Right?
Yeah,
and I can really speak.
It's not a coincidence.
One of the examples I was going to use is because I was in a significant, fairly long-term relationship with an Anishinaabe woman, and I lived right in the heart of Indian country in northern Minnesota for quite a long time, years, and there aren't any people that I'm aware of in North America that I've come across who are more walking the walk and living a spiritual moment-to-moment existence. And they subsist off of, you know, the four. They call it the four horsemen: the salt, sugar, lard, and flour. The free stuff from the government, you know. And they've got, you know, 10-year-olds dying of diabetes, and kids that aren't even in adolescence yet, and wheelchairs, and There is they don't have a disconnect between knowing that those foods are poisoning them, but there's all kinds of addictions going on with,
that's
fried flour.
right?
Fried flour, for instance, is really addictive, so they make fry bread, and that's become like a staple and a cultural pride issue. But at the same time, it's really, really unhealthy for their 3D forms, and they know that, and they have huge extended conversations about it all the time.
Think about how many people do that
they're definitely blessing their food, and it's still making them unhealthy. That's what I'm
saying. That's not working, right? And it's like, hello, like, so that's, and here's the whole thing about it. It's like, that's, once it comes to your consciousness, it's like, yes, you can transmute, and you can, like, to me, honestly, like, where I feel like I want to be and where I want to come to is where, like, the substance of food is purely just enjoyment, right? Because we are made up of energy.
Me too. Yeah. If it's coming out of like a matter replicator, like, I'm totally down with Star Trek. Them having like a sundae with like whatever on it that I want to have on it.
It's like, yes, there's no reason to not. You know what I'm saying? But
right.
It's like, when it comes to my consciousness, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't
we're not there
sit here
yet.
and we're just not, because we're still in the 3D.
Right.
Right? Like, I mean, that's what the purpose of it is here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I think I have this new headset on.
I think I have a slight delay on the phone or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too. So I'm sorry. It might be sounding crazy to people.
No, I just was with the flow of the. I was hearing you after you were talking, I think, for a second. So.
Oh, good. Okay.
So. Yeah, I mean, it's. So that's what I've to kind of go a little bit swing around back towards how I've tried to help people assist themselves if they are looking to do so, and a lot of people are. And I figured out 10, 12 years ago, 13 years ago now, when I had my first executive chef position in a restaurant that was kind of devoted to transformative healing modalities and using the quantum energy of live food specifically. Raw food stuff is my specialty, one of my specialties. But to make, going into the matter replicator idea, making the strawberry sundae with whatever you want on it, or the flavors that people associate with satisfying mouthfeel, fatty feels, and like that is a lot of times associated with.
Well, that's the whole key. That's why people don't like good foods, right? I mean, think about it. They taste like shit. I mean, it's like, you go and get the stuff because we've been so spoiled. And we've got all these taste enhancers and all these great things that we're, used to, just so that you go to taste something raw that's, that's just natural and not totally injected with God knows what, and it doesn't taste right. You're like, wait a minute,
right.
That doesn't,
Kids are conditioned, babies are, that's just we're conditioned to have, our palate is shaped by those things that we're fed when we're young. And a lot of people are not the best things when they're young, One of the first things you get as like college food is like a bread crust, I saw somebody feeding their baby like industrial bread crust the other day, and I was just like, I just had a flashback to like my whole long dark night of the soul, which was my whole life involving wheat and gluten, and like when I got off of it, my entire spiritual reality changed in 2 weeks. I just became a different person.
Well, that's the thing is about it. I mean, I think that there is a point of clearing the body and taking a look and taking responsibility for the things that we're putting into it. Looks like there's some people who have some questions, so I'm going to try and take them off hold and let them ask. I'm not really sure what I'm doing, so I'm just going to try it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Awesome.
So we have area code 805.
Okay.
Hello, area code 805.
I know that area code.
805. Okay, can you hear me? Area code 805, can you hear us?
I don't think they're there.
Oh. Okay, so let me see. Why is it?
it's not working. And I want to apologize to everybody because apparently Blog Talk Radio is having problems. So people aren't being able to listen on the internet, but they can listen when they call in, I guess.
We're not able to connect to them for some reason. Oh, that's too bad. And I don't. Okay. Where's the?
Who's
Dan,
unmuted?
you're still.
Huh. Well, I guess. I guess
Call
we're
back
not
in again.
doing
If we lost
press.
you, try again.
Well, it shows that they're on. I don't know why it's not working. I don't know.
My whole while you're trying to figure that out, just interrupt me if you get a phone caller.
Okay. Okay.
You got somebody?
No, I can't get them.
Oh. Okay. I think what I would love to do at some point, if this works out and it seems like people are interested and we're feeling like it's generating positive commentary on our reality right now, is to have people call in, because there's so many different questions and so there's so much information, like there's so much information out there. A lot of it's conflicting. A lot of it has to do with how you're perceiving the information. What is it doing for you? And it sounds like, Sherry, I just met you like 2 hours ago on the phone, but it sounds like we have a lot in common with doing that kind of really deep self-exploration over the years. And that's what I've done a little thing called culinary coaching for nutritional clarity, where what I was getting to with the point with my restaurant work was trying to make those foods that people associate with really hedonistic, gratifying, luxurious, what they associate with eating, what food should be, pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. I spent a lot of my time creating really, really healthy dishes that met those palate points for people that people required, savory, and to get into the flow of, wow, food can taste really good and also be totally transformative. And that's what I've done in four different restaurants I've worked with.
Talk about.
That's what needs to happen more,
something...
because people associate healthy eating with deprivation and discipline and with denial, like self-gratification and all this crap, and all this stuff is total BS.
Well, and that's something I would love for you. So that's something I'd like to be able to provide for people. Is I would like to be able to, if you could, maybe post on the webpage or someplace that would be convenient, or let it, post your address or, your whatever you've got going on the webpage, so that people can access some of these recipes and have an understanding. Okay, so maybe if you add this to this or this, that you can have texture and you can have, things that are...
I let people bring recipes to me that they are excited about and they want to tweak and improve so that it's coming from their interest. And then I say, you can substitute this here or substitute that there and do this and do that, and this is how you cook it. It's going to make it consistently, and don't overcook it, and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I do, because that way it's interactive and it's coming from the person. It's like, people, their eyes light up when they see some recipe, and then they think, oh, I can't eat that because it has this, this, and this. And that's not what it's about at all. It's about just optimizing the energetic impacts of what you're consuming, but you can do that in a way that your palate is still going to be jumping up and down and going, yay, yay, yay. So they're not mutually exclusive at all.
Oh, I love that.
Complete mythology.
Oh, yeah.
But I like people to generate it out of their own, I say palatial for the word palate. Palatial interest sounds like I'm talking about a palace, but I guess it is. Palace of your flavor.
Like whatever they're wanting, whatever they like to eat.
Yeah, whatever they want to eat and what they're, and then we work with, you have chronic health issues. That's something that you're trying to pinpoint. I've worked with a lot of people over those things over the years, and completely change their lives almost, within a week or two of just removing or adding something from their diet that they're just not thinking about.
Which I think is fabulous, and I'd be interested. And see, this is where. So I would be interested to see what the statistics on different things, because what I have found, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is where this is where the debate comes in, right? Because this is or not a debate necessarily, but just I have questions. Because what I've seen is that, and this is before, I really started getting into the cellular somatic work, but I would see I would see somebody change their diet. They would either take something out, like you said, or they would add something that they were missing, right? Some kind of mineral or, whatever it was, vitamins, whatever they needed. And boom, a substantial change would happen. But then almost sure as crap, within a month or maybe 2 months, there would be something else. Like all of a sudden, they would realize, oh, well, now they've got to take this out. Oh, then they've got to take that out. Then they've got to take, like, it just seems like once the energy goes into that place, then all of a sudden it's like, then you're caught back into the box. Yes, and that's where like, so this process, it's important to have understanding of what you're putting into your body and that what you're doing is healthy because you love yourself, because you're worth it, because what they're trying to inject us with is not good for us, and we're like giving them the finger, right? That doesn't, and that's like claiming sovereignty of our being, right?
Right, it's empowerment. It's empowerment. It shouldn't feel disempowering.
It is. Right, and so what we have to take a look at is, okay, what is it that makes people want to go to McDonald's and sit in the bench and eat, like, you know, all these calories of pure shit, right? Like, what is it, like, why they know, like, especially maybe some people just don't know, right? So that's where education and things comes in. But if you know and you still do it, where is your, it's not like you're a bad person. It's not like, you know, that you should have judgment, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, where's your self-worth? It's like you would not go to some place and literally sit down and eat a bowl of shit, right? You're not going to pay for that. But yet you know that that's what they're serving you, and you're going to go eat it, and you're going to pay them for it.
Yeah, there's so many different angles. Like some people just aren't educated. That's less and less an excuse, and further we go into like hyper IT world because there's so much information out there now, even for people in isolated socioeconomic realities. But a lot of it is like the work you do on the cellular somatic level with what's that initial wounding as an individual.
Yes.
But also, we can't lay all the. It is taking responsibility for what you put in your body, but we're born into culture, and that culture has norms, and the culture has means of feeding itself that are considered norms, and
it is, but
it's really hard to shake those.
Lazy.
It's really hard to shake those things off. Oftentimes they're addictive, and your body wants to maintain whatever your body wants to maintain whatever equilibrium it is in, whether it's healthy or not healthy, generally, because to make that transition, that it requires a huge energy expenditure to either heal or get sicker, generally, and.
And so do you think that that's, I mean, because I always wondered why you don't do it.
Why people what? I'm sorry?
Like, that's always my question. It's like, once you know, it's like for me, like once I saw the way that they make chicken nuggets, right, and I saw that pink stuff coming out of that machine, and then like you saw all the chicken beaks and the legs and all that, like once I saw that, there was no way in hell that I can go there and I can eat that. Like even when it's cooking, like that smell, like that picture comes right into my mind. Right? So it's like, what is the difference, right? Like where does that come in? Because people do know, I don't care, they may not know that story, but they know that it's not good for you. And look at obesity and how much, like we were talking about earlier, 60% of the population is dying of malnutrition. 60% of the people are actually dying from malnutrition, even if it's their heart, their internal organs, or whatever it is. It's malnutrition. What the hell?
That's generally because there's so much stuff blocking the absorption of essential nutrients in their intestinal walls that they can't absorb nutrients no matter how much they eat. That's why people who are grossly obese and overweight always feel like they're starving for nutrients, even though they're so huge, is because nothing that they're eating is actually getting into their bloodstream because there's so much stuff caked on the walls of their intestines.
And see, that's how I see. No, that's exactly right. And that's how I see the cellular somatic system as well, right? Like
you work with the core wounding on an individual level. That's really
and it looks like
huge.
it looks like it's full of fat, right? So when these receptors are holding the peptide and they become more solid and they grow, it looks like a ball of fat to me. You know what I'm saying? It's like this dark spot of, it's not, like to me, I don't put judgment as far as like, oh, it's evil or dark, like in a bad way. It just becomes so heavy. And it's like, and so that's what, if you think of, like, I don't know which is the reflection of which, like, so you could go into the chicken or the egg kind of thing. But it's like,
right.
which is the reflection of which? You're holding this stuff in your emotional, cellular, somatic memory, right, in the body. You're holding these emotions that you've tagged in and created your reality from, right? The universe is answering those ads back and forth. And then all of a sudden the body starts generating in that way, right? Like all of a sudden now the walls of the intestinal lines are completely packed full of shit. Or
it's a microcosmic example of what the whole matrix is all about, to get to the larger. Why are we even dealing with all of these poisonous systems to begin with?
And
they take hold of us on an individual level because they're being down. They're attempting. You have to make a lot of conscious decisions to not let those energies get downloaded into your energy pattern. And a lot of people don't know how to do that, or they're incapable of doing it.
And there you go. And then that brings in like television and advertising and then and this is my topper. Like this is the one that I think is the probably the greatest creation. Is the society, right? Because if you go outside the lines, nobody really has to reel you back in because society will do it, right? Like your neighbor will be like, oh, no, or, give you the weird eye or, whatever's going on. Like everybody's keeping everybody else in line already. And so, like going into a, we had this, like, this is the big joke, like, so I did the big, experiment over the summer and I didn't have the internet or I didn't have a microwave and I didn't have these things and I have teenagers in my house and, it was like the end of the world. It was the most amazing thing. I mean, the first few weeks, like they didn't know what to do. They're like, well, I don't even know how to cook this. And it's like, well, you pull out a pan and you boil some water. It was like really just taking it back. And it was like, and after a while they just kind of got used to it and everything was fine. And, they didn't ever stop asking for it. But then it went into, I have one daughter who is like, super dramatic. And it was like, we are the poorest family ever. It's like, we don't have this and we don't have that. And, like it was so embarrassing to her. Like nobody could come to our house because we were the super poor people. And I'm thinking, that is crazy. Like that's what it's come to. It's like if you don't fit in, if you're not doing what everybody else is doing, then you're the bad people. What? Like that's crazy.
At that point, you just have to print out a dossier of, for example, how like the former USSR, the Russians outlawed microwave use for individual household use, like in the 70s, I think, because the Russians thought it was too dangerous for people to have those in their houses to cook food with. So you can print out all that kind of information, give it to them and tell them to take it home, give it to their parents, and help them wake up.
Well, and that's what's so, it's like, well, and what's humorous about the whole microwave thing to me is that people think if they have, like I said, we did the whole microwave thing, but what I came to, it doesn't matter because the microwaves are all over like they are shooting through us constantly in every direction because of the cell phones, the internet, everything that's wireless and all of these different things, they're all running on the same waves and it's like they've connected into the matrix, right? Like to me, like it's running in the air. It's like there's these lines that are connecting everything all the time, but it's really just energy moving, right? It's like it looks like lines because there's so many little small atoms that are in creation. So it's like it's pulling these in and it's like our bodies are just, it doesn't matter, right? It's like if you consciously are just eating microwave food, you might as well just stop buying it, right? And just go out and invest in some cardboard and just eat that and just see how that goes for you.
It's a couple tenets of what the whole culture is about, and one is convenience above all else, and then the other flip of that.
Above all else, exactly.
They sell it. They sell it to us as convenience, but that's a positive. But on the flip side of that, which they don't ever talk about, that is the powerlessness of like not knowing how to cook, for example. People freaking out when they have to boil water to like hard boil an egg, and having a nervous breakdown, which I've seen people like at that level almost. And
or not having the internet, or not having
the convenience that they don't tell you.
Yes, or just anything that, I mean, it's like, I grow a lot of the food that we eat, and and then we have a process of canning and taking care of things so that we can eat it all year long. And at first when I started doing that, again, it was like, oh, why are you doing that? Because people would say things. Now it's like, oh, their friends want it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's become more acceptable now in society to. It's like it's like a fad to grow your own food all of a sudden. And
the energies are definitely practicing. That's good.
It is good. And what's going to happen? Yeah, it's more acceptable.
With the example of the microwave, for example, and I just find from my experience, you can still override all of that stuff, and we know that. And we were talking about that before we got on the air together. Ultimately, when you're really humming at, you're entering into a completely different quantum reality. That stuff's not going to affect you because it's of a lower vibration, right? And that's where we're all talking about. That's where we're heading. And some people are much closer to that than other people are. Some people are already totally there and don't even know it. And those are the anomalies. Those are the people that people use as an example where, my grandfather smoked this, 3 packs a day and always ate this and never cared, and he lived to be 110. And, those people are awesome, but they're such a small fraction of the greater population. And the control system, the matrix, that percentage of people that have come through over the years that have been able to operate like that is so small, so infinitesimal.
But if you think about it,
they don't care about the few people that aren't affected. Everybody else who is affected is who they are concerned with, and that's the vast majority of us.
Well, and the sad thing about that is that it's something that's manifested out of, again, like it all breaks down to how the body works, right? And so it's like if people have an understanding of what they're made of, like people think that because they know the vascular system that they have understanding, or because they know this, but it's like to actually understand how an atom works. And to understand, that's the base, right? That's what we're made of. And so as we're projecting out and pulling in, and we're doing all of these manifestations from every aspect of our body, right? As something gets stuck in there and it starts to become solid, this is scientifically, an atom becomes heavier, right? It duplicates. It becomes times 7, times 3, times 7, times 3, right? That's what it does. That's the quantum jumps that it makes, and it becomes more dense. Right? And that's in the body. And there's your sickness, right? There's the darkness.
Right.
But what happens is you're eating these foods that are generating at a very low vibration. It sticks in those places that are already fucked up, right? So it's like they can't do anything to us that is not already being done by us, right? It's like, so it's something to, like, it doesn't matter. Like, that's why I say, and I'm trying to learn a new way of saying I don't care about the story, because that sounds insensitive. But it's like the story really doesn't matter, right? It doesn't to me, because the bottom line is, it's like, and I've heard, like, and everybody has one, right? And it's good. I'm glad. Like, that's not even a judgment place. It's like, okay, that's awesome. Everybody's got their own individual thing going on, but it all still comes down to the same bottom line. And that's when you're generating and creating your reality out of a body that is not clear, and that is of wounding, of emotional and cellular wounding, right? Because that's what happens to us in those years before the front lobe of the brain is developed. That's what happens to us, like what you're talking about with the foods that are generated and the habits that are made as a child that becomes a life is. Like you can't even understand or see outside of that a lot of times. And
not at all.
Right, and those are the hand downs, right? Those are the hand downs from our parents, from our grandparents, from all these different things. And that's why you look at certain cultures and they hand down health and different things, and a lot of them are hardworking cultures, so it's important to be sustained well, right? But if you look at America, it's just fine for people to be fat and lazy, because they want you to be drone. Like, they want you in the factory. They want you at a minimum wage job. They don't want you putting much effort into anything. They want slugs, because that way they just stay and do what they're supposed to do without question. Do what they're supposed to do without question.
Okay, Sherry, so instead of saying, like, just don't go to the store and buy that food, or don't eat that ice cream, or don't have that burger. Like, what's the real issue? Like, do you not have enough money? Like, do you like that kind of food? Like, you can't just deny it and say you don't want to eat. Like, you have to deal with the issue, like the core issue. Like, why are you eating this way? Why are you eating kinds of food to your body?
Well, and I think that, like you said, like, so the money is a huge issue, right? That's where people go, right? It's so expensive. They've made it so that if you buy organic at the grocery store, you're going to pay double. Well, and then look at the economy. So, yes, you have certain people that are more than happy to go out and buy everything organic, and that's how they live, and they can support themselves that way, and that's awesome. But there are a majority of people that when they go to the grocery store and it's looking at a gallon of milk and they've got however many kids and whatever their job situation is, they're making under $20 an hour, they're making under $10 an hour. It's like, if they have to pay $2 for a gallon or if they have to pay $5, what do you think they're going to do? Right? That's not an option. If you've got to feed 5, you're going to buy the 2-gallon and you're going to get 2 of them.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, the back to where we started a little bit, that's where the soul energy and the knowing that anybody has is always going to trump all this stuff. I think we kind of agree on that, everything that we're talking about, because plenty of people are in that situation and still shine brightly and do incredible things and are really healthy and vibrant, regardless of the fact that they, you know, are eating stuff that.
That's right.
I would get really ill. But the way I came in my expression into this reality, I was just much more sensitive, and that's just the way I am. I was like that as a child, but I never knew it, and nobody told me.
But see, this is where the wounding.
I wasn't allowed to be more sensitive.
Right, and this is where I think a lot of the wounding it comes in, right? Like, so I mean, this is where, like, I'm not going to do this to you on the air right now, but we can have these discussions later, because I could take you to where it comes from, right? It's like the whole thing comes down to, and this is where for people that have all these food issues and that are struggling in ways that are either, I mean, it can be all kinds of different. It can be allergies. It can be weight. I mean, the weight thing seems to be the biggest. That's the biggest concern and the biggest thing that I hear about people. That's the biggest tear down, is how they feel about themselves being overweight, unhealthy, this and that. But then if you actually have them write down what they're eating and how much they're exercising and what they're doing, it's like our society has made it completely okay to do nothing. Like,
but everybody in McDonald's commercials looks really active and beautiful, Sherry, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, I know. And you know, the TV always tells you the truth, right? That's the other really cool thing. Like, give me a break here, people. And it's like, and we know this, right? Because we know that if you, it's like, you know, we even, and I some people will not know what this is, but there was like these, when I was a kid, they had the junction things, you know, and they would come out with all these little public service messages, and they'd talk about brushing your teeth and eating celery and, you know, all these different little things. And they need to have those now. Like, they need to wake people up, like, go outside. They should have the TV, like, shut off for, like, 3 days out of the week and see what people do, you know? It's like,
yeah, it used to be public service announcements that were actually beneficial in the 70s. I remember those.
And it was fun, you know. I mean, I don't know about fun. I didn't realize it then, but now I think about it, I'm like, damn, I wish they would bring those back. There's so many things that, you know, you could say now that would really benefit people. You know, it's like one of the jokes that well, it's not really a joke to me, but I've noticed it's like almost every single person that I work with is dehydrated, and almost every time they'll say, well, I drink tons of water. I hear that every time. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so that's true. So there's where you were talking about the absorption, right? And where the body just is not capable of absorbing enough water to sustain itself. And how I know that is because when I'm touching into the body, if it's really dehydrated, it's hard. The energy is sluggish. It moves slower, right. And it's hard for me to get in there and really manipulate and move around. So it's like,
sure.
I know that if people are more fluid if they don't have as much wounding. Like, and that's why, like, as soon as one of the wounding, a spot really loosens, and they'll either, cough it up, throw up, start heaving, crying. It's that seed that has to, like, project out of the body, right? And so once that happens, then it moves more flow. It's instantly more flow. And so that's why I say, like, this process, when people do this, it has instant effect. It doesn't, there's no, well, now let's wait and see. You got to make these choices. You got to do this. It's like, no, your ad just changed, and the universe is going to show up for you differently right now.
Yep. Right? Yeah, that's true. You just start down a path of instantly having so much more access to the magic that you're trying to create. And not to say they're mutually exclusive, but everybody's on a gradation, right? It's a spectrum. There's so many different factors, like I mentioned, I think before we were talking on the air, but there's oceans of variables in everyone's expression from second to second, and one of them that you have a lot more control over than a lot of others. We're already, if you're living in the West, if you're living in America, you are already being, people like you and I and other people that are aware of, like, energetic healing and quantum reality, when we are in a situation where we can feel the energy affecting us, we know how to change it and put up, repel it or let it go through us and not let it affect us, not let it get stuck in us so it doesn't affect us. The average person doesn't know that at all. They're not experiencing themselves that way. Well, that energy is being bound up in it. And it's extrapolating from the core issues that are already there and making them worse.
Well, that's where I say, like, the projecting out and pulling in, right? It's like it's answering your ad. It's not being done to you, right? You're projecting it out from the body. It's holding in the body, and everybody thinks, oh, well, it's just stuck there. It is stuck there. It's still in movement, just like everything else. Like, everything is in constant movement. And so you're like, so when that solidness, no matter what you're projecting out, it's flowing through the body, right? It's using the whole body because that's our vessel, that's purpose. And so it's flowing through whatever spots are solid, it's taking that energy with it as well, right? So that's going up in your ad. So that's like the underlining in your ad, right? So, like, and I use the term ad because people can see that above their head, right? Like, that's like we have this ad that's like telling the universe what we want. Yeah, it's like so when your ad is, well, so like one of my perfect examples is I needed help, right? I kept putting out there that I needed help. So what I got out of that is I got to really be in need, first of all. And then I got to bring in people that are also in need, right? It's like I didn't get in somehow I missed the help part, right? Because the vibration went straight into I am in need. Right? So it's like, and so that's where, actually taking a look.
From like an Abraham Hicks perspective, that could be problematic.
Well, and yes. I mean, that sucks. Like, you have to really taking responsibility. Like, what are we projecting out? Like, what, taking it, not just like taking it in, like, this is where the mantras and all this stuff come into play for me. Like, when you're looking in the mirror and you're saying, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. And then you turn around and, again, you go and eat some kind of crap. You're doing all the things that are not of a worthy like that you would not want to see somebody else that you love do, right? Then it's like, what are you really projecting out?
We can kind of split it off. We talked about the socioeconomic factors that can cause that, but let's just say, for the sake of discussion, if we want to go in this direction, let's say that's not really the big issue. Like, let's say that you aren't in a place of socioeconomic wants where you have to buy stuff that isn't optimal for you because you just want to survive and you have to deal with it. There are plenty of people who are not in that situation who still choose to do that. I think that maybe is who you're talking to.
Right.
And like, why do they do that? And you get to the core wounding issues that I was reading about on the website that were pretty intriguing to me.
Well, and
if you're not forced to make those decisions economically, then why
would you do that?
Why do you keep making those decisions? Except, there's, like I said, there's addiction issues. Your body goes into panic when you try to get off of an addiction, number one.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of the stuff that are major foodstuffs, staples in people's diets, are extremely addictive. Sugar
I heard on earlier a show about the bread. or it was somewhere that I was listening to, and it was like their breakfast is bread, their lunch is bread, their afternoon is bread, and it's like, what does bread break down into? It's sugar, right? And so there's your huge addiction. I mean, there's all of these things that go on in the body.
And gluten on top of it. I mean, that's huge.
Right, but I can tell you that, for me, and I will just be honest about, like, I don't always eat. I have my garden foods, and I do all of that. I don't want to eat fast food because I think it's disgusting. Not because, like, I'm putting judgment on what other people do, like, for me. But
sure,
there's things that I eat that are not good. And to me, I'm not going to sit there and go, okay, well, boy, I shouldn't eat this. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, like, the highest vibration into it. Like, I'm going to love it. Right? Like, it's going to be so fabulous. And really intensifying it that way so that when it is going into my body, like, my body is taking it and consuming it and transmuting it, right? Because of the energy that's flowing through it while it's enjoying it, appreciating it, loving it. And then it's not at that point, then it's not an addiction. It's just like, it's what it is. Right?
That overrides, a lot.
Yeah, it does, because, and this is, I mean, again, it's like, we don't realize how much, like, when we're talking about the influences of our society and all these different things, there's like a point of where it's not just like, well, my grandpa did this, and so now that's what no, it's like, it's what we're taught, right? So, like, the grandpa taught the dad, and then the dad hands it down to you, and even if they're trying to do the opposite or doing it differently, the vibration is still the same. And so that's what gets handed down, and that's where all these things actually stem from. And if you can clear the body, it doesn't matter, right? Once your body is not functioning in a way that is, it's like you've changed your oil and you've gotten a tune-up and you're running smooth, those things just don't affect you. They don't hit you. You're going to be able to, eat really crappy food and then do exactly that with it. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to hold in the body.
Yeah. I would use some hesitation with, like, the term you're saying clearing, because it kind of denotes that you're either clear or you're not clear, and it's always like a path, of course. And there's really,
that's true,
because that's part of the way where a lot of people in my experience, like, coming from raw food world where I, like, lived and thrived for many years, that's part of where people get off the rails and paint themselves into a corner, is that they can't do that example of what you just said of savoring and enjoying and transmuting. They're so densely into the body that they're terrified of doing anything that might negatively impact their body. That feeds to, like, the allergies of weird stuff like citrus. They're tragic allergies to me as a chef and as a human being with a tongue. When I hear people tell me that, like, they are allergic to mangoes, for example, or like,
but think about this.
Citrus, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't imagine, like, that's just so tragic, and I have to, like, I have to withhold my stuff.
Because it feels like so much. But the whole bottom line is because that's still that's still part of your reality. But it's like, the truth is that the reason those people have those things is because they're holding in their body, and that's where I'm not talking about clearing, like you don't have any fat, or you don't have this, or you don't have, that's all judgment of, like, being in the magazine or whatever that is. What I'm talking about is the somatic holding, right? When you're not coming from, and believe me, like what you said about that we are always in transition, that is so true. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, even no matter how many times you process something, you can still have something come into the body and hit you from a place or that is not been brought to the consciousness yet, right? And so that's what's so infinite and awesome about how we roll. But it's like, you can come to a place of where, when you learn how to clear the body, you learn that you are not emotion, right? That is an experience, and that you don't have to make that your life is, that you can create and develop from a place of what you want, and in manifesting exactly that, it changes your whole perception of what everything is, right? It's like that, you're pulling in The Secret and What the Bleep and all these great movies and all these things. That's instead of like taking them for just what it is, you're putting them in your toolbox, and you're laying out your toolbox, and you're using a piece of all of this information, pulling it back into the body, and bam, manifesting your reality. Right? And the foods, that's why, like, you talk about, like, when you get shitty gas at the gas station, your car runs like crap, right? Your car doesn't run good, it putters, it does all these things. The vessel is the same way. What you're putting into it, energetically, food-wise, everything, is determining how you're functioning and what your reality is going to be.
Yeah, most people, it's not true for everyone all the time. Obviously, we talked about all those exceptions, but it's a good tried and true, it's just an aphorism that it's something to like keep in your back pocket and be conscious of, because
you have to.
People can say, it's a paradox, right? I mean, this is ultimately a paradox because we keep flipping back and forth even as we're talking. We're saying it's the center of everything and it's so important. And then we flip back and say, actually, it's all about emotions and how you perceive what you're experiencing, and it is everything and it's nothing. Just like everything in the universe, infinite being nothingness.
It is, and that's where and I think that's where
optimize what the experience that we're having. Many of us, and I'd say like the vast majority of us, there are skills and that you can develop and just awareness, and to realize that, like you said, it's a sacred vessel.
People's problems, though.
It's not just a vehicle for your spirit.
Right, and you're exactly right. But that's one of people's problems, right? Is it's like they think that they have to, and this is where I'd like to maybe kind of talk about some of the remedies of things. But it's like people think about being healthy and what they have to give up. Like, you can't smoke, you can't drink, you can't do drugs, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. There's a lot of can'ts, right? And so this, and so people are like, yeah, they don't want to deal with that, right? That's not cool at all. And so I think realizing that it's not a can't. It's like you don't eat antifreeze, but that's not something that you go out and like are starving to have, right? And that's where we've got to take a look at things. Like, what's realistic and what's not? What are we being subjected to, and why? And what's really
food? What's really food, and what is edible media? I love that term.
Hello.
I don't remember somebody wrote about that years ago, and that term stuck with me. And I haven't researched who came up with it originally, but I think somebody coined it just in the last like 4 or 5 years, because I remember it stunned me when I saw it. And I was like, oh my God. That's what it is. Like, the vast majority of stuff that people are putting in their bodies is edible media in Western culture. It's not actually
it has nothing to do with
food,
nutrition. Right. Well, that's so. Like, if you look at the ingredients of French fries, there are 17 ingredients in McDonald's French fries.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And and I laugh because it's like it was India who used to always say that it's like there should only be like 3: potatoes, oil, and salt, right? Like, what else do you need besides that? Like, nothing. But there's like 17 ingredients that are completely nasty and disgusting. We don't even know what they are, and then you start looking them up, and it's like glue and like weird stuff that you're just like, what in the hell? Like, why do they even have to put that in there? What are they doing? But it's in so many things.
So
like, how many of the things you buy? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
When you're in that level, that vibrational level, and in that relationship, interfacing with the matrix and 3D reality and everything else that's constructed for us, it locks you into that patterning, and then your body wants to stay in that patterning until such time that it becomes sick, and then they funnel you into the pharmaceutical and the Western medicine, or you have some kind of healing crisis that leaves you a window of a more positive outcome. But it's still you're still going to have some kind of crisis to get out of that vibrational equilibrium, and because the body just goes into a panic when you're trying to heal it too much, or it's getting sick, either way. So it's always good to do things. I've done things overnight, and I wouldn't recommend it to other people. Take baby steps, and we could start talking about that in future shows, and hopefully take calls people who are wanting to take some.
Yes, hopefully the thing. But don't you think that it also, I mean, because for me, and this is the thing that I've watched, and it's not, I'm not going to claim to have an expertise on it, but I've seen, and I have one client in particular that I watched do this. Like, she literally was allergic to everything.
Okay.
And what happened for her is that it came down to, at a time when she was about 3 or 4 years old, where the family went into, where the child, okay, so this woman has all these severe allergies, right? And in the process, what she ended up doing is coming back into a place in her childhood where there was poverty and that there was no food. And the mother was then, like, when she would try and sneak snacks and different things, was, you know, ridiculing her. There was all this dynamic that was involved, right? And when she released that from her body, right, when she confronted the mother, when she was able to come into that place and allow that holding where it was started, that receptor actually opens up and the emotion is released through the body and the fragmentation is no longer in creation, right? When that happens, all of a sudden she doesn't have those allergies anymore, right? Like, literally, she is no longer allergic to those things anymore. Now she can make choices because she went through all these things where she couldn't eat anything. Now she's making wise choices because she also in this process gained self-worth. Right?
Yep, and
exactly.
how much of it is our judgments that we have from the news and the media always telling us that this kind of food is bad, or this causes cancer, this, and then no, it doesn't, and now it does, and this is bad, you know what I mean, and all that.
Yes, and there's a lot of that. Yeah. And I think I think that's what sucks too, is it's like, you know, like TV. Like, what is that about? Like, why is it that Americans and people all over the world are so bored that they think it's more interesting to sit and watch somebody else do something than do anything for themselves? Like, what is that about?
I think it's more of a, like, habit, and like, people work all day, they're stressed, they do their 9-to-5 job, and then they get to go home and kind of go unconscious in front of the TV, right? Like a way to unwind.
Yeah, and it puts you in a hypnotic state. I mean, it's putting an energetic imprint on you by design. I mean, it's all.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm sitting here, it gives you an unwind. It gives you a distraction. But think about that. If you need a distraction so badly in your life, your life sucks so bad that you need a daily distraction of watching somebody else not have a sucky life, right? Because if you're on TV, their life doesn't suck.
That's true.
That's what I mean.
It's also working on a quantum level, though, to, like, hypnotize you and sort of drug you, like, and people get addicted to that. Just having that energy on in the room, that foomp, that's like an ionization, and it's the same scenario as what I was describing earlier. It's like once you get lulled into it, whatever the equilibrium is, and most of them on this planet for a long time have been drawing people towards more low vibrational states as a whole in most cultures, not everywhere, of course, but. Television is just another example of that, and it's created that way to, like, release. You know, the whole monitor culture is like the energy that's you know, some people are sensitive to it and they have toxic reactions to it, and other people just get drugged and lulled into it. Right? It just depends on where you are on.
And that's where, like, I watched the withdrawal, literally, and it's interesting because. Like when we all of a sudden, yes. Not only there was no computer, there was no cable, and there was no microwave, right? So there was three things that I had, and no cell phone. That was the other thing. So I did. That was like. Well, it's a wonder that I lived through it, because I'm sure that they were plotting against me in my sleep. But it was like I had to make an example. Right? I wanted to see what that was going to do. Like, how is it that here I'm talking all this crap? I want to see it, right? Like, I want, and I did. Like, I could see my one daughter went into total withdrawals. Like, you see somebody that's coming off crack or whatever on TV, and they're like, throwing stuff and all pissed off and acting like crazy maniacs. That is exactly what she was like. I'm like, whoa. And she's still, like, so with the computer, like, if she's really into her games and all this stuff, and I'll be like, okay, this is your 45-minute warning. You know, you've got 45 minutes, and then we're shutting it down. And at that 45 minutes, when I say it, she's like, okay, God, like she had no warning, and she's so upset, and it's like, and it's the worst thing on the planet. She hates my guts.
Yep.
Like, wow. Yeah, it's like, so that's the withdrawal.
Well,
it's like, and so.
Go ahead.
Yeah. It's like, so when you think about that, so here you've got all these things that are causing you to be addicted. What is the vibration of addiction?
Right. That's a huge topic we could spend a lot of time. I was just going to say, I just wanted to tell you both that, like, what you described, that's exactly what you just said your daughter went through. That is exactly what I went through when I got off of gluten, wheat, to a T. You could what you just said, it was 2 weeks,
yes.
And it was like I couldn't think about anything else. I was dreaming about bread and pasta. I was like in major withdrawal, freaked out, like crawling around on the carpet looking for wheat, like I'm gonna die. And then I was able, because I was older, I was probably older than your daughter, so I was able at a certain point to get outside of my physical reaction and my body freaking out because it was going through withdrawal, and understanding that it was a withdrawal, which was huge. That's the number one thing. And saying, like, wait a minute, why can I go 6 months without eating broccoli or an apple or any other, name any other food thing, but when I don't have wheat for, like, it was literally within 48 hours. By the third day, I was losing my mind. I felt like a junkie. And it took it was almost exactly 2 weeks, and I detoxed, cleared, or whatever, like, an entire lifetime. I probably had wheat in my intestine from when I was a kid. and like letting all of that stuff go was like so transformed, like spiritually. I just come back and talk an hour about that whole experience. But after I had craving every time I saw wheat. I wanted it. I just craving, and then suddenly on about 13th, 14th day, it suddenly was not food to me anymore. It just became. I picked up like a croissant. I remember, and like the day before, I would have like, God, I want to eat this fucking croissant, man. It's making me crazy. And then like suddenly the next day, it was like this. What is this? And I was like pulling it apart, and it seemed really plasticky to me. And I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Oh, and that's where, yes.
I had this epiphany, like, what is this stuff that has, like, been sold to us and, like, we are, like, nourished and weaned on when we were really young, that this is, like, the staff of life, it's in the Bible. Wheat is the staff of life. And it was like, whoa, man, butterflies were flying out of my head, it was like.
Because then think about how intense that really, like, and that's not just, like, that's so intense, like, just about, like, just the fact that you came to that realization, but also, like you said, like, this is handed down. And think about, so if that's the kind of stuff that is handed down to us on the food levels, what kind of stuff is handed down to us on an energetic level, right, that we're carrying around in the same way? Like, literally, like, so you got to take a great big shit of all the, I mean, sorry, that was a little extreme, but it's like, so, like, okay. So I'm going to regroup from that one because that kind of embarrassed me. So, like, that's like you literally got to discharge that from the body, literally, because once you weren't absorbing that anymore, it was like your body was like, oh, we don't need that. It's yucky, blah, 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 and it let it go, and you probably had all kinds of weird stuff coming out, too, right?
The programming did not, the addiction / programming, and that's what it is right. So strong, and I was hyper aware of what was going on, and I was eating organic food, and I was already vegetarian and already really healthy and stuff, and it was still like hell on earth, And so I know people who like try to do it, they can't do it. They go like 3 or 4 days, and they really want to do it, and I'm like, I get it. It's like smoking or anything else. It's like use the patterns. If you don't want to quit, that's cool. Enjoy it, love it, do whatever you want to do. But if you're feeling like something's off in your body and you want to make that change, it's really, really hard to deal with some of those really intense programs / addictions, whatever you want to call them. To me, like, the longer I go, the more, to me, and we get further into, like, matrix analysis, it's very clear to me, like what you were saying. But what's going on beyond the food is way more deeper. It's programming.
Exactly. And I think that there's another piece to that, too. Like, Right, and I think that there's another piece, like after you go, like you were saying, like once you looked at that croissant, like it was like gross to you. See, like the same thing, so like I don't drink anything carbonated, right, because of what it does to your bone marrow and blah, blah, blah. I can give you all these reasons. And plus I just don't, I just don't like it. So, but once in a while, I'll take a drink of one of my daughter's sodas or something like that. And because I hadn't done it in so long, the last time I did it, it ate the tissue in my mouth. Like it literally like ate my mouth. I was like, what? Yes. And it was because I hadn't exposed myself to it for such a long period of time that when I did that, It was like my body went into, it's like I might as well have been dumping pure, whatever, acid into my mouth. That's what it felt like. And it like burned, and I had like, not sores, but like literally like the taste buds were gone. Like I had burned it. It was gross. So needless to say, I don't drink that anymore.
You can clean your car battery with soda, man. It's,
Hello. It's like, yeah, but let's put that on the market, and then let's put it on sale so that everybody can buy 4 cases for $10. Like yeah. Okay, so I think
we're past an hour. Bethany, do you want to do a break or anything, or what do you guys usually do?
Yes, that's kind of where we're at. Is that we're going to take a break,
Another guest?
and I think I don't know if we can call anybody in now. I think this is kind of what's happened is that we're on a stagnant like we can't, nobody else can enter. You're stuck here. So Bethany, is that true? We can't get anybody to do anything, right?
No, we're gonna take a quick break here, and then we're gonna take another caller.
Oh, can we do that now?
Yep, we can do that now.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, good. Okay, so we'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Elemental Evolution. Dan, are you still there?
Yeah. Am I here?
How are you doing? Okay, and we're gonna. Tisha should be. We're gonna bring in Tisha. Tisha, are you there? I don't know if it's gonna let anybody else.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, are you here? Hi.
Yay.
Hi. Sorry, I'm kind of in a noisy spot.
That's okay. Do you want us to call you back?
Hold on just a sec. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Sorry, I had a hard time getting in there.
Yeah, that's okay. The Blog Talk Radio is having problems. No one can hear it online.
Okay, here. No, Bethany, I'm going to call you guys right back. Is that possible?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll call right back in. So stay right there.
Okay, so Tisha's going to call back in. Sherry, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yep. And Dan's still on?
Dan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so Tisha's on now?
No,
Is that what you just said?
It was really loud wherever she was, so she's going to call back in.
Oh, good. Okay.
Since she was on a bus, I think.
Yeah, it was really loud.
I couldn't hear anything because I was inexposed or whatever you call it. All right, so is she calling back in? What's going on? Why are we so quiet?
Yeah, she will. She'll call back in.
Okay, so how about...
She was talking right back in that.
Okay, so it looks like there's somebody else on the line. Bethany, do you see that, or is that just me?
No, that's just Dan.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. That's just Dan. Sorry. That's funny. Okay.
It's like me.
Okay. Well, so I guess we'll just start back up, and then when she gets to a place where she can.
I was going to share my. I'm sorry?
Go ahead. No, that's great.
I was going to share real quick, like, because you're getting to, like, you just gave the example of the toddler, or not, of the issue with your client who had something from when she was, like, 3 or 4 or whatever. Right? With the allergies, the the panoply of allergies she had. You traced it back to something from her when she was very, very little, right? Hello? Oh, did I lose you?
I'm sorry. Sorry, I lost it for a second. Sorry. Okay, can you hear me?
All right. I can now.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. So I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
I was just saying, so you just gave the example of a client you had who you traced back this whole panoply of debilitating allergies she had suffered
Right.
to some core experience when she was very young, like a toddler, right? Almost very, very small
Right.
child.
Right. Right.
I just wanted to, that triggered me in something that I've been wanting to talk about on one of the 5D shows at some point, and this would probably be good since we're on right now. But there's always so many things to talk about when you call into so many people, different topics. But I had experience where some people would call it, I don't know if it was really a walk-in, but I don't know what happened. But when I was very little, probably like 3, I think. My mom would know the story more accurately, but I might even been 4, I don't remember. But I had blonde curly hair and blue eyes when I was born, and through the first few years, 2, 3, 4 years, whenever this incident happened. And my father could not stand the fact that I had blonde curly hair, and blue eyes. I don't know if the blue eyes was a big part, but the blonde curly hair, because everybody always thought I was a girl, and it made him crazy. Because he was from like old school, 8th grade education, lower working class, whatever, Midwestern background, standard patriarchy, John Wayne type deal, and
Sure.
It made him crazy. So one day he took me out in the backyard. I still have like kind of vague memories of this because I think it was kind of traumatic, but because I just remember how it was like an imprint. He was imprinting this on me, and he shaved my head down to like the nub. And my mom was infuriated and didn't talk to him for like 2 weeks. And my hair grew back brown and straight, and my eyes changed color to brown.
Interesting.
And
so, like,
I'm pretty sure that was like major energetic.
Right, and
like
you're thinking that it's a walk-in, but really what it is it's a walk-out, right? So
yeah, I don't know. I thought too. It was like whoever I was before I incarnated, which I'm doing a lot of work on that right now, deciphering all that stuff and looking to work with people on those angles. If you can point me in any right directions, because I've been putting that request out to the universe for a while, because I've got things pretty figured out on this level of where I am and how I got here. Wanting to know what's going on before.
That's why you're here, right?
So, yeah,
so
I'm thinking that some part of me or whoever that was, and probably some segment, I don't know, but something was like, because I always felt when I was really little that it was kind of like a mistake. I was like always like, God, I can't believe I did this. Like I didn't want to be here, and it was just too heavy and too dark everywhere. So I'm wondering if like that was
that way.
There was some
like
fracturing.
Everybody that you're talking to. Yes. Well, this is what exactly what I'm talking about. This is of course, right? So like you were having all these questions. This is exactly, I needed this brought up because this will explain it so clearly for people, for you, so what you're talking about, right? Like, so when something happens, first of all, I want you to like imagine that story, right? The little boy with the blonde, beautiful hair, right? Imagine this in like in a box, right? You've got the little boy, and then you've got the mommy who just thinks he's so handsome and so debonair and just totally doting and loving, and then you've got the daddy who's like, looks like a girl, blah, 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 right? And so
that's pretty much it.
right. So just pretend like you're like looking at it in a box, right? You're not attached to it. You're looking at it as if it's somebody else, right? That little boy is somebody else, right? So you're taking a look at it, and then. Right, but what you're doing is you're bringing it to a different consciousness at that point, right? And so what you can do is then you take a look, and so you say like, well, I think that was something dramatic. Well, yes, because look at how the mother reacted right there. So like if the mother had come to you and said, "Oh, you are so handsome! Oh my God, this brings out your eyes and blah 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 blah," you'd have been like, "I I am the shit no matter what I do, baby. Right? But
yeah, my
instead,
mother viewed it as a lot. My mother was angry.
Right.
She viewed it as a lot. You're
Yes, right. Like, so she went into like, oh my God, oh, it was devastating. She was so angry that she wouldn't speak to him for days and days and days. I mean, and so look at the pass on, right? Like all of a sudden,
it gave him all the power in the situation. It gave him all the power in the situation as well, and it was basically all like anger, you know.
Well, and so boom, and so look at so like if you fall back in, right? So if you think about that situation, this isn't psychiatry, right? This is a totally different deal. But what you're doing is, so you're thinking about that situation. You're thinking about this little boy who, like you just said, has no power, right? So that dad gets to do whatever the hell he wants to you, right? It doesn't matter. He can come in and shave your head. He could shave your ass, and there's not one thing you could say about it, right? Nothing.
Right.
So it's like, so you got to really like let that little boy that got stuck in there, right? Like he was pissed off. He was pissed off. Not just the mom. The little boy was mad, not just at the hair, but at the way he was being controlled and manipulated. All of these things were coming up in his body, but he was not allowed to say one word.
It was a rejection of my being.
Hello.
Essentially.
So what are you going to do? Right.
My father was saying, like, it wasn't just a physical act of shaving my head. It was like, you are not acceptable to me the way you are. And I'm going to physically imprint you with, like, my
you are not acceptable. That's right. What just got, like, what you said. You are not acceptable. So no matter what you do. Right. So now think of this. So then what have you reprojected out of your life? Like, so in your ad, all of a sudden, like that's when your front lobe of the brain is not fully developed, your life is right then is what it is. That immediately goes up into your ad, right? And so your ad is right there. I am nothing, right? Like your self-worth, your everything just fell out of you. And if you are nothing, you are going to exit your being. You're going to fragment, right? You're going to pull your true essence into a place where it can be hidden because it's not going to feel the wounding that's being held in the body, right? It can't because it can't stand the suffering. Right, it can't stand your true essence doesn't want to be in turmoil, right? So if you can fall in, like, so when you're thinking about this situation of your dad cutting your hair, your mom being just totally not just pissed off, right? She's also feeling the control, right? Like that was something that was important to her, and he just took it, right? There's all these dynamics that are going on, right? So if you can actually like put yourself kind of now back into that situation, right? You don't have to fall into the story, but like just step down into the box, right? And take a look at this little boy and then pull the dad in, right? Like really take a look at him, not just, it's like energetically, like really pulling in his consciousness, taking a look at his face, the way he moves his mouth, the way he talks, the way he was shaving your head, you know what I'm saying? Like really bring in the physical being of him and tell him what you want to say. Right? Like, it's no longer like, you're not this little kid anymore now.
I've done that a long time ago. I've done that.
Right.
I did that a long time ago.
And what did that do for you?
You're right.
So,
most people have not done this kind of work at all. So it's awesome that you're doing that with people.
And so think about, so as you're doing that, and that was pulled in as such a great example, because here's the thing. It doesn't just take once. Right? This is the thing. It happens. Because what happens is the universe, when you put that ad up, right, and the universe keeps answering your ad, right, it's like adding salt to that same wound every time. You're adding fertilizer to the seed that was planted, even though you think you don't want it. And so it gets to grow, and it gets to be bigger, and it gets to manifest.
Yeah. And that's where the food systems get overlaid onto that the etheric energy, the etheric energy that drove my father to do that. Which, when I look back at my life, you know, it's complicated. We can get into that stuff, but he might have been prompted to do that. I was born into like a city where there was a lot of dark energies going on, and my dad wasn't like the most lighted dude in the world either. So, but that's the etheric intent of what he wanted to do, and then you just put on top of that. I was already hugely susceptible because that happened basically like in a pre-literary, a pre-linguistic mode. So I didn't have the way to like express it in language as I developed language skills, really. And then you put on that all of the fluoride in the water and like any proclivity I would have already had genetically or in a past life or whatever to having sensitivity to wheat, for example, would just be compounded a million times over, because that's the way the matrix works, is that anytime that there's a quote-unquote flaw or some susceptibility, some quote-unquote weakness that it perceives, it'll throw every toxin it has at the book to make you more and more and more susceptible to energetic manipulation, because it feeds off of dark, like lower vibrational energy, so that's where it wants you to be. It's very complex. It's simple when you see it from afar. Your voice is really breaking up, Jerry. I cannot hear you. Bummer. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? You guys do?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super garbled. I think something's trying to keep us from having this conversation. I wonder if I should try to call back and hold it, because I can't hear you. It's just so garbled. I think I'm going to call back in just to see if I get a better signal, and you guys can try to tell me, because I can't understand you. Okay, I'm going to call back.
Okay. What's my headset? I thought it was my headset, so I took it off. That's not what it was.
I'm not sure what it is. Long time video was having problems.
Wait, no, now I can't hear you. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I could for a second. Okay. Talk again.
Okay. I'm going to call back.
Okay, so I think I've got this. If I can hear good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can't hear you again. There. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I feel like that Mervyn commercial. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
No, that wasn't Mervyn's. I was thinking of the open. It was the cell phone commercial or something. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. And I don't think Tisha is going to call back. I think she...
Maybe too noisy where she is, I think.
Yep.
It's okay. So, I mean, I think that this is so relevant in our conversation, because it's like one of those things where if people believe that they are going to get sick from something, it's like whether or not it's true, it doesn't really matter, right? They're going to get sick because they're already holding that in their body, right? So it's like they're already manifesting it. They're already creating it. And so anything that you add into it, I think will just accumulate, right, and build up and do the things that are,
Yep. Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you hear us? Yay.
It's clear again.
Oh, good. Yay. Okay, so...
So I have no idea what you were talking about like the last 10 minutes, but that's cool.
Sorry. All right, so I was just going into talking about how you can see where if you have holes in the body.
I'm sorry. Could you hear me talking when I was talking, or was I garbled too?
No, I can hear you, but I don't know. I can't hear what's going out onto the radio, so I don't know what everybody else was hearing.
Oh, I just wondered if you were hearing me when I was telling you that I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
But it wasn't doing
so
it. I couldn't fix it.
So we made the point essentially that most people have, we're kind of born on a planet where a lot of something is going to happen to most people when they're young that's going to be very jarring and say, like, the world that you want is not the world that you're going to get. And, like, we're taught that at some point. some kind of trauma low level
right,
because it's really hard to incarnate here.
Well, you're not allowed
and
to express.
Toxins are laid on top of that and exploit that core wounding, and depending on who you are and how your pattern is being expressed on a quantum level and where your soul is in its evolution, all of the things are overlaid on top of that and exploit that core issue and create all kinds of problems for you later on down the line.
Well, and it's even, and to me, I guess where it's so much more dynamic, and this is probably my crazy mind because I'm so into the atom right now. Like that to me is so substantial. Because when you're talking about like creating our reality from a place, like I call it wounding, I call it, a place of darkness. Like I have all these different terms that define whatever this is that is projecting out and pulling in. And it's relevant because if you take a look at our society, right? I'm not just talking about our neighborhood. I'm not just talking about the people we run with. I'm talking about like how the world, what is going on in a majority of the planet right now, like all this control and all of these different things. And then you take a look at each being's personal life in those areas, you will find that it is a reflection of both again, right? And that's why it's like the foods that it's like everything, like when you are projecting out that you are in lack, and this is how they, like you don't have to, somebody doesn't have to maintain you. There doesn't have to be keepers, right? Because all that has to happen is at a young age, there can be something planted in you that is a life is. And nobody has to do another thing. You will generate that and create that because it's in your ad and the universe will show up for you every time, right? So when you're telling and you're putting out there that, let's see, I want to use a very simple example. Like I wanted to go into the Monsanto or the foods, but that can be too convoluted. Like when you're putting out there, I am alone, right? Like, so it can be, you are lonely. I want someone. I need someone, right? Right. So what happens is you're really putting into your ad, you're telling the universe that you are alone. You are telling them by being in want that is the vibration that you're projecting out and pulling in. And this is where coming into consciousness and being responsible, right? It's like taking a look at what we're really projecting out. Again, like this takes back into that same story. When I was telling the universe, I need help, I need help, I need help. Yeah, help showed up, but it showed up in a way that was in me, right? It's like, wait a minute. Like, if you want something, it's almost like putting out the gratitude and the thankfulness and knowing, right? And that's blessing the food, doing all these things, like knowing that what you're putting into your body is 100% nutrients. And so, like, you can say, okay, well, I'm transmuting it. Okay, great. If you're at that place, that's awesome. But on the real 3D level, it's taking a look at it, like you said. If you know that you're eating a piece of shit, well, and you're doing it anyway, guess what you're going to feel like?
Right. We're kind of reiterating. There's the paradox is there, but at a certain level, you are tethered to this reality that we're all co-creating and collectively experiencing together. And there are walls that if you cross over, you will, cease to exist in this fashion. You can say that that's part of the paradox where we can say, well, you can eat shit, but if you transmute it and make it healthy for you, it's cool. You're like a fifth dimensional master, or whatever. You're in another place.
And bam!
And a very small fraction can do that, but there's even a smaller fraction of those people who can deal with the slow load of toxins that's put out by the matrix for us to ingest and ramp it up and say, well, why don't you just, drink cyanide then if it doesn't bother you? And who's going to do that?
Yeah. Like,
you don't want to die immediately, right? Because if it kills you immediately, then people wake up. Then people are like, well, wait a minute, this is toxic.
Don't do that. Mm-hmm.
Because like my friend just dropped dead when he did it, So it's like there's a gradation, and everybody has their own breaking point. But most of us, at some point, it's like we're still mortal enough that we can bleed to death, we can accidentally poison ourselves, and like realizing that there are things along the voluntary consumption trajectory spectrum
in this
that you have
reality
control
of now.
To alleviate those possibilities is huge, and people
Well,
should embrace that. Not be
right. Well,
not be
and I
upset
think
about
that
it
it's
or feel
coming.
deprived or whatever.
Right. Well, and here's what's coming, in my opinion, right? And this is where, again, I'm going to take it into where people will be like, really? Or, whatever, right? Because this is about evolution. This is not just about
I'm not doing that.
I love that. That's what I love that. It's like, well, and that's the whole thing. It's like, I think that you really do get it, right? It's like there's this thing where, like, we will come to a place of where as the fifth dimension, like to me, that's on the inner side of the planet, right? What people are actually seeing as outside in the universe is actually inside the planet, just like it's inside of us, as within is without, right? And so what's going to happen is, like, I see somehow, like, the world literally doing a flip inside out. I don't know how to describe it any other way, and I don't really know how it's going to happen. But it's like I can see it already. Like, people are starting to wake up, but it's like it's going to take this huge, like, it's like I call it the piano. Like, some people can take a pebble, right? So they get this little storm and they get it. But most people, including myself, unfortunately, like, we need a piano. Right? We need something to knock us like you see in the cartoons, right? And that's what's coming, because the planet can't sustain anymore. It can't sustain the vibration that it's been carrying. All of the negativity and all of that stuff that's been it needed in the beginning, right? That's how, if you think about it, like the atom, it's the positive and the negative, and then the neuron that actually create and are moving and generating, right? That's what is creation. So, but what's happening now in evolution is, as time has moved, or whatever you want to call it, and as the planets have come into a different place and we're vibrating at a different level, the atom itself is actually transforming, right? The feminine and positive, or the positive and the negative, the feminine, masculine, whatever you want to call it, is merging into one, into balance. Right? So,
yeah.
So that's a big deal, right? Right now.
Right, it's huge. It's huge. It's really. I just had a realization that I was just nodding in agreement with everything you were saying, and how it was like something. It was so obvious to me what you were saying, and then I just realized how outstanding that was that we were having this conversation, because it's so. It's like I think Bob was like getting really elated and giddy the other night on one of the 5D shows where he's like, I can't believe we're having this conversation. It's so awesome.
It's so great. It's like, yes, and this is the time, right? It's like we're finally at a place where we can. And it's like, and people are getting it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the whole thing. It's like, and we are. And it's like, and this is what, so, like, I love being able to talk about how, because I feel like the missing link, right? Like, I love that. I love using that term because it just sounds so, like, I don't know, like catchy. Like, you could put that on a T-shirt. But it's like,
what's it?
It's the missing link, right? Because we've all been so focused on awakening, or the soul body, or the outside of our body, or we're not our body, it's our mind, remapping the mind. Like the mind and the soul have had so much attention. And so to be able to pull back in the trilogy, right, which is like the trilogy of all in creation, right, and to pull that back in at a time where it's literally pulling everything back in, like the vessel will be the transformation, the awakening that people don't know, like that they're expecting it to, like, I don't know, like I've heard all kinds of, they're either expecting a spaceship, or they're expecting Christ, or they're expecting, I don't like all kinds of things. And maybe that will come for them. I don't know. We're all creating our own reality, so who knows what's going to happen. But in truth, what's happening is, but it's like, in truth, the merging is what's really the awakening, right? It's like coming into that place, and that's where, I talked about, and I want to have this discussion about the gold, right? Because it's like, to me, pulling all of the elements in, elemental evolution, right? That's going to push forward the evolution of the body, right? When you put your feet into the earth and you're connecting in and opening your portals up and allowing the universe to flow through your being, right? It's like that's taking you to the vibration of creation, right? And if you can create from that place, you're not going to create the shit that's going on now. Anyway.
Right. And I keep expecting that to happen, like, in short order. We all are. I'm manifesting that every day. Like, I'm so in the vortex right now. My life is just so incredibly awesome right now in every single way. And every day that I go forward, it's just getting better and better and better. And I feel all of us that are feeling that way are.
Well, it's interesting.
We're flipping that charge for the people who are on the despair side. Like, we are opening.
Have you noticed? Have you noticed that it's like
really quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm cutting out. So this is what I think is so phenomenal, and I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who's noticing this, but it's like I keep hearing like people are going through a lot of sickness. Like their tummies are hurting, they're having vertigo, they're having heart palpitations, they're having all of these different things, and then they're going through emotional traumas. Like all of a sudden they're angry, they're sad, they're this, they're that. I think it's the energies coming in right now that are clearing out the body energetically. Like anything that's stuck in there right now is getting pushed out, or it's getting, if it's not getting pushed out, it's getting enlightened, and then it's the being's choice. It can either leave the body or it will encapsulate, right? And then it'll fester, and that's what is going to cause death and cause all of these things on the planet. People aren't going to understand, and they're going to have all kinds of explanations for it, but it's really just that the body cannot maintain the new vibration of the new time.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and it's okay because it's like people are like, oh my God, people are going to die like flies, and it's true, but they're not really dying. They're just going to a dimensional place where their bodies can vibrate where they're at and allow them to evolve as they need to. And that's not a judgment of people are above or below or anything else. It's just, like I said, looking at it like an ant pile. You know, like it doesn't matter. You're not going to, it's just the way it is. And you're not going to have judgment. When you look down at an ant pile and you see two ants, right, you're not pissed off when one ant hurts the other ant, right? You might be grossed out, but you're not like, you don't have judgment on that ant. You're not going to follow him around and make sure he gets punished. Right? Because that's just not that's not what it's about. So right? That's like how I feel about like humans. It's like, why go there? We don't need to do that anymore. We can let that go. The age of karmic debt is over. Right? And I gave this example before. Yeah, and I gave this example before, and I know that like people, I don't know if people were listening and if they went and tested it and then they're like, holy shit, or whatever, but it's like if they'll fill up their sink with water, right, and just make it into a pool, like make it into a little pool, and then they'll dip their finger into the center kind of with a brisk motion to where it like creates those waves out, like the little rings out. They will notice that when it hits the side, it does not come back in, right? It used to, when you did that 10 years ago, when you put your finger in the center and it went quickly, it would project out, hit the sides, and then project back in, right? It doesn't do that anymore because our time and vibration has shifted, right? So now, like again, right? So when you put your finger in the center, bam, it projects out, it hits the sides, and the vibration continues on through the sink or whatever, right? It's not coming back into us anymore. The karmic debt is over, right? And karma is just it's the term for projecting out and pulling in, projecting out and pulling in. So now it's like we're not doing it from generational times anymore. It's just of the now. So if the body's holding it, that's what's projecting out and pulling in, and that's what can be cured and made okay in the now. So we don't have to go into the stories anymore, right? We can let all that go. We don't have to go into past lives. We don't have to go into what aliens we've been, where we came from. None of that. I mean, like if you like that, that's cool. Like go for it. But like you don't have to go there anymore. You can let all that go and just release from the now and allow your true being to come in, and let's play with that. Let's see what that's like. You know, that's
right.
The better.
True being, we're like the true being level. Then that's all pre every incarnation. So for some people, that's way back in the quote unquote past or the continuum of experience, and other people have barely incarnated at all. Maybe this is their first time. That's the whole point. Is like some people have thousands of lives of shit that they're just becoming aware of, and other people are like, I just came from a total formless realm and wanted to do this because I wanted to experience the end of duality on this planet once.
Boom. And there's so much to it too. Like I love that. Like, and I love that you said too that you were so happy because that's the whole goal. Like to me, like, I have this whole really dynamic idea of how it all works and blah, 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 blah. And I can really, like, I can get very scientific or I can get very spiritual and I can throw all this stuff out there. But really what the bottom line is for me and for anybody that I work with or anybody that I'm pulling into my consciousness, it's like the whole idea is to wake up happy and to go to bed the same way every single day. No matter what's going on, no matter what's happening, it's like if you can be in that, if you can wake up and be like, bam, what's coming today? And love it, write it. It doesn't matter, right? Because we're creating it, right? And creating it from a place of consciousness and then going to bed and thinking, God, I had such a great day and I'm so tired, right? Like I've got to get some sleep, you know, and then do whatever we do on the astral plane while we're sleeping, right? Let our
I've been in that
digest.
space for months now, and it's just it's gorgeous.
It's such a
really,
great
really gorgeous.
And it's so cool that I mean, and there's that's, you know, that's another cool thing. It's like it doesn't have to just be one way. Like my way is not the only way, and I totally get that. It's one way, right? Like this is a way that through laying out my toolbox of all the things that I've experienced in my life, this is one thing that I feel like works. But I know that there are lots of ways. Right? And so people, it's just coming to that same place of vibrating at a level of not of wounding, right? Of taking ourselves out of the story, out of the box, out of the realm that has been created for us and recreating in our own existence, our own being. Yeah, it's awesome. It is freaking awesome.
Yeah, I'm not what I was going to say is I'm not trying anymore. That's been the biggest thing for me to figure out. I went through, like you were saying, a lot of I've gone through so many healing crises, but it is in the last few years, like 2011 especially, and like the beginning of 2012, you know, I needed to go through like huge tumultuous turmoil of I call them vasanas. I got that from the former 2012 scenario, The Golden Age of Gaia, from Steve Beckow. It was written extensively on what we've talked about this whole 2 hours, which he calls them vasanas.
I like
the
term.
That term works for me.
Yeah.
So like those
like
core, and because you mentioned there's more than one, you go back to the some initial traumatic thing that happened to you when you're 2 or 3, but then something happened to you a month later, and 7 or 8, and all that stuff gets hardwired into your fascia, which Rolfers are so good at releasing from people.
Right.
And that gets connected to your emotional body, which affects your like soul vibration. It's all part of like the matrix schemata, you know.
Right, and the difference between that
I wanted to recommend that to people, like just briefly. If you're totally aware of all the channeling stuff, which I totally understand, and I mostly am for the most part, and there's a ton of that on the Golden Age of Gaia site. But if you go in and put in their library on Vasanas, he has written so much eloquent, beautiful stuff that's been really, really helpful to me because he's done all of his processing in public and totally transparent way on that website for years now. And he's like a Mensa member and just really, really articulate and very compassionate, loving writer, fun to read. But there's tons of information about like healing those and releasing and how to deal and move through all of those. Basically the cellular somatic energy.
And that's what it's all about. Right? It's not about, and here's the thing, is that and this is where this process is different than almost anything that I've seen out there, and I know that there's things that are similar, but most people that are doing cellular somatic healing are doing the healing for people, and that's one of the reasons that it doesn't stick, right? They're not allowing the person to actually heal themselves. They're not teaching them how to heal themselves, and that's where this process is different, right? Like this is teaching people a change of life, how to take the wounding that's in your body and not keep projecting it out, but also not to keep letting the things that are happening in our existence stick, right? Like as it keeps coming from other beings or whatever the energetic paths that we're on, not letting it stick in the body.
Some people are so, and that's part of my thing is I'm hyper empathic, like I think at points like when I was really humming optimally on what my nutritional intake, what for me would be optimal, which would require me to have sort of a different financial reality than I'm in right now. But when I have been there in the past, and my empathic tendencies. I mean, I just that was part of the reason why I think I wanted to escape really early when I was a toddler and realize where I was at, because I'm so empathic. I felt everything like so intensely from everyone around me, and I ended up utilizing that and turning that into an artistic outlet. Way back to the beginning of the show here, this is good circularity. But I ended up, I look back now at like all the music I did was very like I was channeling a lot of negative feelings for the collective, like through my art, through like the style I had singing and my guitar playing, and it was really out there, and like that stuff was going on because I didn't know at the time consciously what was happening, but I was partially processing like all of the like pain and suffering that's going on in all different levels in my reality and around the world. And there are many people who have done that because of like so much darkness coming from the Matrix, in the 80s and shit, or back farther, whatever.
But I mean, I say it's interesting that you're saying that, because that's one of my, I test the planet just like a person. I go in, I energetically heal the planet, and I get rid of the spot where she's holding, right? Because it's all reflection. And so it's like, as we're clearing the body and it goes to the collective, like as we take recognition and as we take responsibility and we start looking at what we have manifested from our wounding, all of that stuff really, like, it just goes away. Like, you don't really even have to do anything. It's bringing it to the consciousness, resubmitting your ad, right? Like putting it like, oh, wait a second, I'm changing this line. And all of a sudden, what comes to the universe wants to answer our ad, right? We are in creation and the universe is there for us. So it's like if we can come to a place where we're projecting clearly, it's going to come in loud and clear. Bam!
That's the biggest thing that's changed for me. Is like, this is a perfect way to like kind of wind down why I love Abraham Hicks, and like why I'm totally like in Abraham Hicks, like in the vortex.
Yeah.
I can't. It's weird because before I was like always, and she has pieces where they're like, trying to get in the vortex is the first thing that'll keep you out of the vortex. So it's like you can't like really want it consciously too much, and like now I'm like I can't even figure out like really how I got here, and I can't even fathom like not being in it anymore. But the point was like I know now like how I got there was because of all of the stuff that I've been through in my life, which was fairly severe on a multitude of levels and chronic and long term, some of it like decades of like not very positive energy. But I'm at this point now where I know like from a way higher level, like I'm talking like 8th dimensional level or whatever, like totally formless, just higher self beyond, a higher vibrational ET or whatever, beyond Fifth, Sixth, whatever, however we want to use that hierarchy for the point of our limited ability to talk about it linguistically, but from way out above and beyond, and like that's where I know who I am now, and now all of my life makes complete sense to me, and like that's why I feel like I'm in the vortex now, because I know that really what I wanted to experience, I wanted to experience all of that polarity because I wanted to know what it was like to feel like that. I've had like major separation.
Don't you think that also, but here's the thing.
I know I wanted to experience that, so I can relate to other people now who are also going through
That's the whole thing. It's about empathy, and that's where I think a lot of the so-called light workers, pillars, whatever people are calling themselves, it's like they have had to experience, like they've had a lot of trauma in their childhood. They've been abused. There's been a lot of abuse, a lot of trauma, because they had to come to a place of really having empathy and losing judgment. When you have empathy for other people, you are not judging them. And that is, to me, that's the biggest place where people step in. And I'm not excluding myself. Believe me, sometimes I can fall into serious, like I went through a phase where I pretty much thought everybody on the planet was really stupid, including me, right? Like, it's like, what the fuck are we doing? But then, coming out of that, right? Wait, right? It's like, okay. So it's like taking a look at perception and the way that we're projecting out, and so like really going, okay, wait a second. You don't have to go there. It doesn't have to be ugly. It doesn't have to be like everybody's stupid. It can be, well, everybody's where they're at, and maybe it's me who's being stupid, and that I'm protecting it. I love it when that happens.
Okay, guys, we have about 2 minutes left, and Dan, you had someone in the chat room named Laura was wanting you to mention your meetup on September 7th.
Oh, right. In Laura Sar, we are meeting we had a meeting in Sturgeon Lake, some Minnesota OPPT IUV exchange folks in Sturgeon Lake a couple weeks ago, and we're having another one on September 7th. So anybody in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Dakota, whatever, wants to make the trip. I'm getting an echo. Is that clear? Can you hear me?
No, I really, you know what? That's something that you should get with Bethany on, because I couldn't hear it.
Oh, you couldn't hear what I was saying?
I could hear you. I can't hear him.
Oh, well, I could hear him.
Oh, so maybe everybody else can hear too.
Got it. September 7th, Sturgeon Lake. Anybody in the upper Midwest who wants to come to this fantastic piece of land that a couple OPPT folks have brought to the forefront of our awareness recently. We had a really good time and had great bonding and conversation. So contact us on the OPPT Minnesota page.
She said you could also email her at her email, which is, oh man, I'm losing it. Hold on a minute.
You have it. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me.
The email is lstar23@gmail.com.
Lstar, STARR, right?
No, just STAR.
Okay.
23@gmail. Yes, you can email her if you have a question.
It's too bad your other guest wasn't on. That would have been cool.
Well, and you know, it's kind of weird, and I think that I think there were some call issues, but I noticed this online earlier with some other shows. So hopefully by next week it'll all be fixed and we'll be back on.
Okay, thank you, everybody. You have been listening to Elemental Evolution. I hope you have a good night. I'll see you next week.
Good night.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye-bye.